Hey everyone, this is Andy, better known as Love Retro BTW on Twitter X, Threads, IG, and Cafe BTW on TikTok and YouTube. A quick update that the Cafe BTW podcast is taking a very long hiatus, but I still have something really amazing to share with you. We have a fantastic retro gaming community on Twitter X where we've crossed well over 2,000 passionate members. And if you're a lover of retro gaming, this is the perfect place to share your content, showcase your pickups, or just chat about your favorite old school games. To dive into nostalgia and become a part of the thriving community, click in the show notes on the Cafe BTW link tree or go right to my Twitter X profile on Love Retro BTW. And now, without further ado, gear up for another sensational episode of the Gamers Week podcast.
Coming up on Gamers Week podcast.
The games need at least 7 professional reviews before they even are considered like a real game enough. So it's not like Hairdresser Simulator 2 is important enough to put on this list. But the fact that it was a Lord of the Rings game meant that every professional critic had their eye on it and was going to play it. So it just got walloped.
I thought Hairdresser Simulator 1 was much better.
Okay, in all honesty, by show of hands, who would actually play a Hairdresser Simulator?
I assume you two both have your hands up.
I have my hands up. I don't think it almost seems like it would be a don't mess with a Zohan type situation where I'm just in there, I've got the hummus. I'm using that as gel and I'm cutting the hair. I'm blow drying and everything. I'm doing support Mitchell,
And you're banging all of the clients.
Yeah. Blue, do you have the show notes in the...
It's in the Twitter chat.
I put them in Twitter chat.
Okay, stop flip-flopping.
There will be no flip-floppers on this podcast.
Hell, man. We're putting it in Overlords. We're putting it in Twitter. We're putting it on MySpace. Make a decision.
You guys are allowed to flop around all over the place. So,
what are we talking about here? Wait a second.
Do you need the link again or are you good?
I'm good. I pulled up Twitter. I have the link.
Okay, good.
So how are we, Ryan?
We are good.
Are we good? I'm more interested to hear about how your Taylor Swift experience was with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce.
I admit I didn't listen to the last show, so I don't know what you're talking about.
You suck. I'm leaving that part in so everybody can hear.
What kind of man doesn't even listen to his own podcast?
I was busy, okay? I'll go back and listen, I swear.
Were you using your right hand or your left hand when you were busy?
Both. Ooh. Some of us are a little bit more talented.
The right hand would hold the tweezers and the left hand would hold the tweezers?
No, the left hand holds a microscope. Come on, get it right.
Matt, he didn't even skip a beat. Just
he did
into
not.
it. Well done.
Kisses, baby.
Are we ready to start this thing?
Let's do it.
Welcome to Gamers Week podcast. Like the name says, we analyze the best, the worst, and the weirdest headlines of the past week of the video game industry. This is episode 103, and today is Wednesday, December 27th, 2023. And I am back, bitches. Took a week off, got refreshed, and here I am. I know you all missed me, didn't you? It's all right. Well, for those who don't know me, my name is Ryan, aka retrogamebrews, and I am not alone this evening. I have 2 fine co-hosts with me. First of whom, after seeing a portly redneck man playing a guitar solo while chugging a beer, has promised to take up the harmonica and attempt to recreate this amazing feat. We wish him luck. Donnie G, how you doing tonight?
What?
I do have mouth talents that would make me very very profitable on the harmonica.
So I sent Donnie a reel of a guy who is chugging a beer while playing guitar, and I think you had suggested that this would more than likely allow him to get several partners after that, correct?
Correct, especially in his area where he lives, I'm assuming.
Yes, it certainly did seem like it.
I mean, Donnie, if your mouth talents are that good, I feel like you could make a lot more money doing other things than harmonica.
Like balloon animals?
I think she was going with Big John Bear. And my next co-host. My next co-host, who has recently confessed that her all-time favorite cartoon character as a kid, and that has led to many of her habits as an adult, is of course the Fonzie-looking mascot from the Turkish Blend tobacco products, Mr. Camel Joe, and she recommends the Camel Menthol Lights. Blue, how you doing this evening?
I'd love to say something clever, but you're actually not that far off, so we'll just go with it, sure.
All right, Camel Joe it is. On that note, why don't we go ahead and check our reviews, reactions, and requests for the week. First up from Frank Gonde, the Holiday Uncut episode truly put me in the Christmas spirit for the first time this year. Loved every second of it, and honestly, the best video game themed holiday special out there. I'll die on that hill. Thanks for all the laughs. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Next up from Squirrel of Rage. Now I can't walk past my kiddo playing Minecraft without cackling because my brain works like Retro Blat's pets.
And you don't even get that.
I don't get the joke. You're right.
Nope.
And last up from Matt Brown via email. Said, congratulations on 100. Looking forward to several hundred more until the Retro Brit covers the PS4. Since major AAA games are taking longer to develop, 5+ years, at what development time will we cross a tipping point of either valuing replayability or playing fewer AAA games? I think that's a good question.
I think we're probably nearly there anyway. I don't think the revolution is going to come from the gamers, though. I think it's going to come from the AAA developers, because as we talked about a lot last week, 2023 was a banner year for games and then a horrible year for layoffs. And the fact that you had those two things go together just proves that the current system, it ain't working. And something needs to change. So the question is, just how much longer are they going to keep shooting themselves in the foot by doing things this way before they admit they have to change?
Very good question. And I don't have the answer to that. If I did, I'd be rich. Bobby Kotick rich.
Oh.
And now it's time for the...
I'm already into this.
Christmas is over, all the presents have been unwrapped, the mess has been cleaned up, and it's time to relax by the fire with a nice Crystal Pepsi and a staple of American literature, the Far Side Gallery. Someone calling to wish me a Merry Christmas? Or talk to me about my car's extended warranty? I don't recognize this number. Hello?
Hey. Who are you?
I'm donniegretro, lover of high tops and 1/3 co-host of the Gamers Week podcast. Who is this?
It's Snake. Liquid Snake? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I said yes. What is this? A futile attempt at early 2000s telephone humor? Because I'm totally into that.
Listen, I'm feeling lonely.
Are you really lonely, or did you just call me to find out this week's poll question? You must not have Twitter.
No, I'm serious. Please, talk to me.
But what would you like to talk about? How crypto is a scam? How this is my 38th Christmas of not receiving the G.I. Joe USS Flag aircraft carrier?
Looks like we both have a lot to learn about each other.
Well, are you still on another Metal Gear mission?
How do you know that? Is this transmission being monitored by the military?
I'm sure it is. You wouldn't believe the amount of dirt they have on me. I could never run for political office. Why don't we talk about the Gamers Week podcast and our VIP? You can tell me your choice for this week's poll.
Is that all you cared about?
Okay, fine. What would you like to talk about?
Does the name Deep Throat mean anything to you?
Easy.
I'm locked up here in this cell. There's a big torture machine nearby.
And I'm going to stop you right there.
What? Why?
This is our main show. I can't facilitate this kind of conversation here. Maybe if you'd like to call back during our uncut, me, Blue, and Ryan can talk to you a little bit more about this.
Bastards. Okay. No problem.
Just out of curiosity. Were you close?
Oh, the perfect ending. Well done.
Thank you. Every Monday on Twitter, we post our VIP, our very important poll. If you'd like to participate, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. So the question this week was, without saying finish my backlog, what is your gaming New Year's resolution? Coming in third place at 13% was make my own video game. And my hat's off to anybody who's going to attempt that. And for the first time, I think we have a tie.
Second time. I think we've
Yeah,
had a tie
I think we had a
once
tie
before.
once before.
Oh, okay. All right. I stand corrected. But we have a tie for second and first place, 35.8% of each. One says buy more games, and the other one says finally beat that one game. Now, 15.4% of you said other, so let's take a look at some of the comments from the poll. At Kenneth DL says play at least one retro game a month. Can be on new systems. Hope to beat it in a day or two. At Umbreon 3000 says, reorganize my entire setup. I want to display more of my stuff properly and have my systems all hooked up and ready to go. I also want to modernize my retro systems with wireless pads and potential mods for HDMI output where possible. That is going to be an endeavor.
Yeah, I did that a few years ago, and I will tell you, it makes a huge difference.
At RadMadMal says, get my streaming consistent and listen to more retro gaming podcasts. Maybe start my own.
Let us know. We'll listen.
Yes, we will. At Eric Malcolm says, finally dive into Red Dead Redemption 2 and the Grand Theft Auto Remastered series my wife got me last Christmas. Guess he's running a little bit behind. And at Beer in a Game says, buy more and finish less.
I like the way you think.
Me too. So based on the poll question this week, Ryan, what's your gaming New Year's resolution?
So I kind of flip-flop between buy more games and finally beat one game. Or finally beat that one game. For the finally beat that one game, I've always wanted to beat Battletoads. I have gotten fairly close, but I can't get past the rat race level. For some reason, that's just beyond me. So I thought, you know what, maybe this year I'll give it a try. But I think that's too daunting of a task. So I'm actually not going to go with that one. But what I do want to play is some Souls-like games this year. I've promised a few people I'll play them. And I haven't gotten around to it. So that will be my resolution for this year, is to play more Souls-like games and finally find one that I can enjoy.
So you can't just play a Souls-like game, though. We're going to need some details, because you can't get into a Souls-like game and 10 minutes decide you hate it and give up.
I agree.
What is the time frame that you're going to give it?
At least we'll say 15 hours. How's that?
Ooh, okay. No, that is acceptable.
Long time.
And how many Souls-like games are you going to give 15 hours before you decide you can't stand the genre? Because that is my prediction.
Well, and the problem is I don't own a crystal ball, so I couldn't exactly tell you, but my goal is at least 3.
Okay. That is also acceptable.
Blue, what about you? What's your gaming New Year's resolution?
So the last few years, my gaming resolution has basically been, don't buy more new games, just play what you have and actually finish what you have. And every year I fail miserably. And so I'm going to be realistic this year, because I see that everybody around me somehow has a gazillion hours to play games and finish games. And they're always posting like these long threads of, here's every game I finished this year. And it just goes on and on and on. And I don't understand how it happens. And this year, I'm going to have so much less time to play than I have the previous years. So my resolution this year is to be realistic. And it is to say, I'm not going to compare my gaming with everyone else's. I'm going to do what I have time for. I'm going to do what I enjoy. I'm going to try to not let the FOMO get me. And I'm just going to enjoy my gaming for me. That's my resolution.
Oh, it sounds like you're casual.
Hey, at least I play new games. I've played games that were made after 1999.
I play Splatoon 3 in this week again.
Well, she's a girl, so she's not even a real gamer, right? I think for me, I plan on playing more newer games, and I've already gotten a jump on it. There is a game that I purchased a couple weeks ago or months ago or whatever called Killer Frequency. And it's a game that came out, I can't remember if it was last year or this year.
This year. I think it was just a couple months ago.
Yeah, it wasn't too far or too long ago. And the idea of it made me intrigued and excited. So I bought it. It wasn't that expensive, but I played it, beat the game, It was fun. It was refreshing. And I was like, you know what? There's a whole new world awaiting me out there for all of these new games that people have come out and developed. So I think I'm going to play Warzone less. And yes, you heard that. Play Warzone less. And I am going to play more games, more newer games.
I'm going to start keeping a board up on the wall in the room that I record in. And every time Donnie says that he's not going to play Warzone, I'm just going to make a mark on it. Yep.
I said not as often.
Some variation. Either you're done with it completely or you're hardly going to play it at all or whatever. But, you know.
Didn't I say I was done with battle passes and skins and all that stuff?
Sure did. What did you do?
Nothing. Just the battle pass, the most recent battle pass for Call of Duty. I'm a sucker, I admit.
We're just going to record this and keep it isolated. And next time you say you're done, we'll just loop it into the show.
I'm a sucker, I admit.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and shout out our patrons?
We couldn't do what we do without the help of our gorgeous patrons. Here are the generous folks supporting Gamers Week on Patreon. Emo-esque, Bill Tucker, The Real Retro Game Brews, Fruitcakes Pickled Pepper, Ducks with Thick Thighs, Wizard of Zardoz, Bobson Dugnut, Loudmoth, Retro Blast Pat, Great Siaman 81, B&T Zilligai, The Mad Milkman, Johnny Boombots, Seven Castle Forest, Crunchy Kong, Sheriff Snacks, Frank Grande, Love Retro BTW, Steven Sand, Ramboski, Terry Canair, Doongie Forever, Ducks in Disguise, Don't Make Me Pull Over This Car, Games with Coffee, Hybrid Divide, Matto 1606, You Fall Before Me, Davey PGH, The Red Ox, PDX family, including Shannon and Luke, Scalazeel, Zach Hughes Thanks, Number One Blue Sick Boys Fan, Sassy Sony, Evo Lust, Ry's Secret Best Friend, Mega Retroman, Gamatroid, and Michael LeKite. If you like what you hear today, and we really hope you do, please consider joining us on Patreon. Your support helps cover the cost of producing the show, as well as other cool stuff we'll be doing, like prizes and giveaways. You'll also gain access to our weekly patron-only bonus cast called Gamers Week Uncut, Patrons with Benefits. Visit patreon.com/gamersweek or follow the link in the show notes to learn more.
And just a reminder, if you join us before the end of the year, you will get our Christmas gift sent out to you. So feel free to join. All right, so why don't we go ahead and take our look at our headlines for the week. Our headline segment is proudly sponsored by the Retro Game Club podcast. It's a fantastic family-friendly retro gaming podcast, and in each episode, Rob and Hugh pick 2 games to play and discuss, as well as news, interviews, and other topics. Right now, they're playing through Rippin' Riders Snowboarding and 1080 Snowboarding. Visit them at retrogameclub.net or follow the link in the show notes. I will fully admit I have not played either of these games, and the only snowboarding game I think I've ever played, like legitimately, has to be Too Extreme, which isn't really a snowboarding game. It's like every extreme sport that's out there, even bicycling through long distances. But I do remember when you would go through the things, it would go like 150, 200. So have either of you played Rippin' Riders or 1080?
No, snowboarding is kind of like sports games in that I'm not really going to play it on a console. Now, if you go into an arcade and they have the setup where you're standing on the snowboard, those are kind of fun. I'll try those, throw a couple bucks into them or whatever, but I'm not going to buy one and bring it home and play it on a console. No, heck no.
Yeah, you don't feel like you're shredding the tube sitting down on your couch as opposed to an arcade.
This is the guy who plays Call of Duty on his couch.
Shut your face!
I was listening to somebody talking about that if war games were real, that 98% of the time you would just stand around and do nothing.
Oh, yeah. That's the military. Hurry up and wait.
Wouldn't sell quite as well, though.
Nope.
No. From Business Insider, China is in damage control mode after its crackdown on video games sparked an $80 billion market meltdown. China appears to be getting cold feet about its new restrictions on online games after an $80 billion market sell-off. On Friday, Chinese officials announced new draft rules aimed at limiting how much gamers could spend and restricting rewards that encourage them to spend more time online. The announcement was a surprise and ended up spooking investors and sending markets into a tailspin. Games giant Tencent saw its share price drop as much as 16%, while the stock of its rival NetEase tumbled a record 28%. Shares of the social media service Bilibili
Say that again in the same voice. I loved it.
Shares of the social media service Bilibili, which is popular with gamers, tanked 14%. These three stocks alone lost over $80 billion in market value on Friday after China's announcement, according to Bloomberg's calculations. Investors seem to fear a resurgence of a harsh crackdown against the tech sector that started in late 2020 and continued through mid-2023. The crackdown weighed on China's economy, which has been struggling to stage a convincing recovery following nearly 3 years of on and off pandemic lockdowns. The regulator in question, China's National Press and Publication Administration, appeared to quickly walk back its restrictions. In an attempt to calm the market, the regulator said in a notice on Saturday that it would seriously study the industry's reaction and improve the draft rules. On Monday, the regulator announced that it had approved 105 new online games, a likely sign that Beijing is easing up on its latest restriction. The state of approvals demonstrates the authority's active support for the development of online games, the regulator said in an official WeChat statement on Monday. Crackdowns on online gaming in China aren't new. In 2021, Beijing barred those under the age of 18 from playing on weekdays and restricted them to 3 hours of gaming on weekends. The move was aimed at curbing gaming addiction.
So I think what China is experiencing right now are the pitfalls of capitalism.
Yes, you mess with somebody's money and it bites you in the ass.
Right. It's a market that decides where it wants to go and where it wants to spend its money. So if you're going to have a government that's going to put restrictions on the availability of games and therefore the likely profit that a company would receive, chances are that will have an impact on the economy, on the stock market, on a lot of things. And I think what they've done is they've tried to correct. I will give them credit if their intentions are true, like, hey, we want to curb gaming addiction for kids. I get that has almost like an altruistic point of view that they would like to do that. Whether that's actually the case, I don't know. But the point being is that intentions are always great. But you have to be aware that collateral damage happens when you make a decision as broad sweeping as this one. When you're going to crack down on certain aspects of the gaming industry, it's going to have an impact somewhere else. And the one thing that I think moves people the quickest is money. And as soon as that starts going away, everybody goes, oh, we were just kidding. Sorry. Huh?
Well, I think what China is learning is that video games are not just a passing fad. They're not just for kids. They are a real, tangible global force now. Right. I mean, in 2022, it was $236-ish billion of global revenue in the video game industry. By 2026, that's projected to increase up to $321-ish billion. I mean, it's real money, and there's a lot of it. And whether you think they're good for kids or not, or as horrible as China seems to make them out to be, it is pretty funny, like you said, that they are willing to make sacrifices for the good of the youth until it starts messing with people's money. It is kind of funny that they really never thought that doing this would affect grown-ups. They always thought that, well, these rules are for kids, so who cares?
And that's it, is that they just didn't think ahead of that. They have it's from what it seems like, a very myopic view of what gaming is and its future in regards to China's economy. And if you think about it too, China is an economy that has been growing hand over fist until the pandemic, right? And they've been struggling quite a bit in order to kind of recapture some of the gains they had received in the 2010s and early 2000s. And by running into a situation where there's these massive stock, sell-offs and those kinds of things that are having an $80 million impact on their economy, they're only digging themselves a further hole. So the question is, seeing that this happens, are they going to take a more of a laissez-faire approach to the gaming industry? Because honestly, gaming is a powerhouse. It's what could drive their economy, and they can't be left behind.
It is, but I don't think they're going to take a laissez-faire outlook with it, especially with the fact that they're still trying to crack down on video games amongst youngsters.
Right.
I think they made a hasty decision. They didn't really investigate the ramifications of that, and that's why they came back and said, "Oh, well, we're really going to review this." And that's what people do. That's what politics do all the time. It's like, "Oh, we messed up. Let's form a committee and let's really review what's going to happen just to make sure we don't fall into the same trap again."
Couldn't have done that the first time.
No, it was a hasty decision followed by a hastier decision.
So they're going to investigate a little bit, and they're going to come up with some more restrictions that sort of fit the mold to where they don't lose this much market value again.
Well, I mean, because the restrictions are talking about, let's see, what is it? The draft rules aimed at limiting how much gamers could spend and restricting rewards that encourage them to spend more time online. So basically, their plan, or part of their plan to curb video game addiction, is to handcuff the companies who make the games. I mean, I was like, what did you think was going to happen? Seriously. But the powers that be in the government that thought these things were a good idea, that think games are harmful, I mean, those people are still there. And I imagine that they're not going to be appeased by the idea that these rules were walked back to try to save these companies from going under overnight.
I will say, though, is that China's government's a little different than most of the Western world, right? Where individuals there, I would say, have less control than maybe the executive branch does in China.
Well, fair, but somebody still thinks this is very important.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. But if that puts a negative light on China, I would be willing to bet the farm that the executive branch of China is probably not going to want something like this to happen again. So my guess is that they're not necessarily laissez-faire, but they're certainly going to be a lot more hands-off moving forward.
She doesn't believe you.
All right.
No. But I do think it'll be super interesting to see what comes of this in the coming months, in the coming year, to see if they dig their heels in and still say, no, these standards that we've enacted, we really think they're important, and we think the well-being of our youth is worth more than the well-being of the stock market. I think it'll be interesting to see those two forces kind of butting heads,
right.
and see who wins.
It's the octagon.
Yep. All right, next up from Men's Journal, scientists use Mario game to treat depression. Here's what happened. Clickbait, anyone?
No.
You won't believe the third thing that the scientists said.
You won't believe number 3. That time spent with Mario could be better for you than you might expect. Researchers in Germany recently published a study in Frontiers of Psychology that looked at how playing 3D video games can treat cognitive symptoms of major depressive disorder, including reduced affect, mood, and cognitive impairments such as memory problems. In the study, 46 participants diagnosed with MDD were split into 3 groups, with one playing the Nintendo Switch game Super Mario Odyssey, while another used a cognitive training computer program, and a third underwent traditional treatments like psychotherapy and medication. After 6 weeks, the Super Mario Odyssey group saw the greatest decrease in self-reported MDD symptoms, with instances falling nearly 50%. Furthermore, the Super Mario Odyssey group reported much higher motivation to continue treatment than the other groups. Furthermore, results suggest significant... Why so many furthermores? Who wrote this shit?
I think you should just leave them in.
Results suggest significant improvements in tasks of visuospatial working memory performance during post-testing in both training groups. However, the 3D video gaming group demonstrates more selective improvements and does not perform significantly better than the other 2 groups, according to the study author. Still, these mixed findings suggest that video game training may be a cost-effective and feasible intervention for patients with MDD that can be used in conjunction with regular treatment and therapy. The study focused on MDD's cognitive symptoms, like memory and problem solving, rather than the affective symptoms, like feelings of sadness or decrease in pleasure. Previous research has found that 3D games like Super Mario Odyssey engage the hippocampus, a part of the brain associated with learning and memory. A 2015 study in the Journal of Neuroscience found that 3D video games boosted memory performance by 12% compared to 2D counterparts, while a 2017 Nature study found 3D platform games helped boost hippocampus gray matter. As the researchers note, the small sample size and non-blinded methodology of the study means more research is needed. Still, it's an interesting finding further... I hate you.
What is going on?
I'm just messing with you.
Still, it's an interesting finding as you put those holiday gifts to use.
So I will say this, from my anecdotal experience, playing games like that certainly do make me feel better. I'm somebody who certainly suffers from anxiety and other depressive symptoms, if you will. But something about gaming has always allowed me to feel much more kind of in tune with my life. I feel a lot more, how would I put it? Just having purpose, being organized, those kinds of things. And that's why I've always gravitated toward gaming anyway. It's my release. It's my escape from things if I need them to be. So that's interesting that the study would find that, in particular, Mario games have an impact on those types of issues, if you will. I'm not surprised by this, is what I'm trying to say.
I do think the type of game is pretty important. I don't think you're probably going to see these types of improvements in Warzone or other games, especially online games that are known to be horribly toxic environments. So yes, an offline, family-friendly, brightly colorful 3D game with a nostalgic feel to it, I imagine, would have the best chance of producing feel-good results.
100%. The color palette, the songs used, not so much the challenge at times.
Oh, they didn't even try Super Meat Boy.
Oh my God. Yeah. Feeling bad about yourself? Here, play a video game. Oh, what's this? Super Meat Boy. What the? Yeah, that's exactly how that would go.
It allows you to express your anger.
Well, I noticed that our friend Retroblast Pat had posted something on X or Twitter about this particular topic, and somebody had clapped back and said, Super Mario Odyssey, yada, yada, yada. I hate this game. It's stupid. There's no way this cures depression.
I saw that post as well. And it was just interesting. Like, we tied it back to being, that's such a millennial mindset as well. My guess is that this person just needs to play more Mario Odyssey.
Oh, there you go.
Probably. So does Mario Odyssey cure depression? No.
No.
Did it help a couple of people feel better about their depressive symptoms? Yes. Is more study needed? Yes. But I think it's nice to see that this is a possible avenue, especially in a time where there is a growing awareness of the need for mental health services, and yet access is still very, very, very difficult. So if you're feeling crappy, should you just go play video games and not pursue other treatment? No, that's not what anybody is saying. But it is nice to know that this is perhaps something that is commonplace, that almost everybody has in their home, that could be used to help improve this mental health epidemic that the world is going through. And I think that that's really promising.
I agree. I think that one of the things that you've seen recently in the space of psychology is this desire to kind of take a look at things like psychedelic drugs and that kind of thing. If you're not someone who's comfortable doing something like that, at least there's something like this that's an alternative to that might have some impact. Is it going to fix you? Like you said, probably not guaranteed, right? But nonetheless, I'm glad that they're at least looking at the avenue that video games might have a positive impact on people.
They can have space on the Switch or the next iteration of the Switch that said, hey, if you're feeling down, come and give one of these games a try. Come give Super Mario Odyssey a try. Come give Super Mario Brothers Wonder. Try Wayne's World for the NES. Give this one. Definitely not that one. Or don't, yeah. But something along that lines where they do more research with certain types of games and notice that some with vibrant color palettes and good uplifting music will get people out of their funk, even just for a little bit. And that might make the world a better place.
And you know what, you bring up an interesting point too, so that, Nintendo doesn't have to be the sole company that tackles this. If more studies like this come out and people get inspired by it, maybe indie developers will purposely make games that are soothing to folks who have depression in some capacity, capturing the 3D platforming space that Mario has occupied. And then, you know what, you'll have more of a focus towards that. People deliberately making games that are
I was like, people are already doing that. The cozy game craze is popular for a reason.
Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking of like the fact that there has been, more of a focus towards things like autism and that kind of thing. And now you're seeing, Broadway plays that are focused more towards groups of people who might have sensory issues, right? And creating opportunities for them to be able to enjoy entertainment kind of their way. So,
yeah, the inclusive.
Right. It's far more inclusive. Exactly. If this ends up doing that more, like deliberately making a game that does that, maybe that's cool.
There's a growing awareness in the world that different people think different ways and have different needs. Mm-hmm. It's encouraging to see people reaching out to these different groups and finding out how can we include them in the everyday things that we take for granted, and how can the everyday things that we take for granted be used to make the lives better for other people with specific needs. So despite all the darkness and crap that goes on in the world day to day, it's nice to see stuff like this. And there's little beams of light out there in the raging blackness of 21st century life.
I feel like the outer shell of nihilism that is blue has cracked just a little.
It's so dark and so cold.
Yeah, the star from the Super Mario Brothers movie in the cage. That's what I hear.
I didn't get that far.
Oh, you would love that character too.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Time, like hope, is an illusion.
It's like existential nihilism in a character.
In a cartoon star.
Yeah. All right, next up from Game Rant, 10 lowest rated games of 2023 revealed. Despite being a year marked by impressive new titles, remakes, and stellar additions to established franchises, 2023 was also tarnished by considerable disappointment and failures. Annually, Metacritic releases a list of the worst video games of that year. Here are the titles that have disappointed players in 2023. The award for the year's lowest rating game goes to The Lord of the Rings Gollum. Ouch. A game that generated significant buzz for its profound disappointment, particularly considering its use of the Lord of the Rings IP. Gollum garnered negative reviews, currently holding a Metacritic score of 34 on the PS5. The game was described as baffling experience, criticized for its lack of inspiration and dullness, ultimately falling short of the expectations set both by fans and the Tolkien universe and the gaming community at large. Following closely is Flashback 2, scoring 35 on the PC. Despite Flashback's revolutionary history and the nostalgia it invokes, the sequel failed to captivate players. The game was criticized for its poor presentation and execution, riddled with bugs that further hindered the experience, earning it the second spot on Metacritic's list. Grey Hill Incident claimed the third spot with a Metacritic score of 38 on the PC. It faced criticism for several reasons, encompassing its poorly executed story and voice performances, lackluster stealth gameplay, uninspiring environments, and numerous bugs. Other games joining Metacritic's lowest rated list include Quantum Error, with a score of 41, Testament, The Order of High Human, 41 as well, Crime Boss Rocky City, 43, Hellboy Web of Word, 46, Gangs of Sherwood, 47, Loop 8, Summer of Gods, 49, and Gargoyles Remastered, 49. However, it's important to note that Metacritic only categorizes games if they've received at least 7 professional reviews, meaning some titles with poor reception weren't included on the list.
So how many of those titles on there do you recognize as ones that we actually picked in our top 3 new releases as the one we wanted to play?
Gangs of Sherwood is one of them.
Yep.
Ah, yes.
Crime Boss Rocky City as well. Gargoyles Remastered. And Gollum. Let's not forget, you two wanted to play Gollum.
Mm-hmm. And as somebody who loved the first Flashback game, Donnie.
That is correct. And this is the first time I'm hearing that there's a Flashback 2.
Aren't you glad you heard it on this context?
Right? No, but we don't always have the foresight that, like, let's just say the Chinese government has, you know, when we make our decisions.
Burn.
But yeah, there's going to be horrible games. There's going to be games that are hyped up that get a lot of they get a lot of buzz going, a lot of groundswell, and people are like, man, I can't just be excited enough about this game. And it comes out and it's an absolute golden turd laid at your feet. And there are those games. And I'm sorry, but there has to be. I think in order to keep the gaming universe, the scales balanced, there have to be those games that you're excited for, that you're like, hey, I think I'll give this one a play. And it comes out and it absolutely bombs. It keeps us centered. It keeps us whole. It keeps everything right in the universe. We can't have every single game that comes out an absolute masterpiece, an absolute banger that just wins all these awards. There has to be the ones that just completely fall off.
Donnie, the philosopher.
Right. There's a very yin-yang approach to things.
What about that 11th game that just didn't get mentioned?
The developers are like, yes, thank God, we got a 50. Imagine being somebody who put your blood, sweat, and tears into this, and your game shows up on this list.
I can understand that.
Yeah, there's some surprising, ones that aren't on there, considering, like, Redfall's not there.
Yeah, I was thinking, where's Redfall?
Redfall looks like game of the year compared to these ones.
Maybe they paid to keep off this list.
That seventh professional reviewer, they were like, we'll pay you $1 million if you just shut up. But yeah, I thought Redfall was going to be on this list for sure. Mm-hmm. And the only one that I'm not surprised in immediately was Scala. I think that the reception of that game was extremely poor. And we talked about that before. Yeah. That it was just a complete flop. So
I was actually surprised it was still the lowest.
I think maybe being a Lord of the Rings IP helped influence it from being that. Yeah.
That's what I was just going to say is I think it got more attention than it probably would have otherwise. And like it says, the games need at least 7 professional reviews before they even are considered like a real game enough. So it's not like Hairdresser Simulator 2 is important enough to put on this list. But the fact that it was a Lord of the Rings game meant that every professional critic had their eye on it and was going to play it. So it just got walloped.
I thought Hairdresser Simulator 1 was much better.
Okay, in all honesty, by show of hands, who would actually play a hairdress simulator?
I assume you two both have your hands up.
I have my hands up. I don't think it almost seems like it would be a don't mess with a Zohan type situation where I'm just in there, I've got the hummus. I'm using that as gel and I'm cutting the hair. I'm blow drying and everything. I'm doing support vigil,
And you're banging all of the clients.
Yeah.
You'd be sexy smooth.
The fizzy bubblech.
Fizzy bubblech.
Normally, this is the part of the show where we talk about our top 3 new releases of the week. Except, once again, there are exactly 0 new releases. But stay tuned to Gamers Week, because we've got a big lineup of new titles coming in January and February, such as Tekken 8, Like a Dragon, Hey! Infinite Wealth, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and Persona 3 Reload.
All right, now the moment you've all been waiting for. Here's the main topic.
From Time Magazine, the 10 best video games of 2023. 2023 proved to be a blockbuster year for video games. Hotly anticipated platform titles debuted on a monthly and sometimes bi-weekly basis, consuming video gamers' time and the contents of their wallets like some viral new version of the ever-insatiable Pac-Man. But it's not as though gamers minded much, given the quality of the output. The biggest struggle proved to be staying on top of all the new releases, and there's no doubt that many people will still be playing catch-up well into 2024, especially given the length of some of these games. Whether in the form of games that encourage a multiplayer experience or solo games that hinge on the importance of community, the best games of 2023 consciously placed attention on the far-reaching consequences of the personal decisions made by the characters we play as, and, by extension, ourselves. Here are Time's favorite games of the year.
I heard it's not about the length, it's about the girth.
It's about the motion of the ocean.
Number 10, Dredge. One of the year's most pleasant surprises came from New Zealand indie developer Black Salt Games. What initially appears to be a normal fishing game takes a disturbing dive into Lovecraftian lore. While the game lacks the polish of its AAA counterparts, eye-catching art design, great use of sound, and an ambitious format built into seemingly simple gameplay made Dredge one to play and Black Salt Games one to watch.
Number 9, Diablo 4. The iconic dungeon crawler returned with more classes, more weapons, and more demons to slay. Diablo 4 may not be a big risk taker, but it's possessed by the kind of casual, satisfying fun that doesn't place pressure on completing in a certain number of hours or avoiding spoilers. As far as play at your own leisure games go for this year, Diablo 4 is one of the strongest and bloodiest.
Number 8, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Respawn and EA's sequel to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order picks up 5 years after the events of the first game, with Jedi Knight Cal Kestis, Cameron Monaghan, separated from his friends and performing missions for Saw Gerrera, Forrest Whitaker. As fun as the combat and new features are, it's the emotional storytelling that makes the game such a balanced experience.
Number 7, Super Mario Bros. Wonder. It's been a big year for Mario. Not only did the plucky plumber star in one of the biggest movie hits of 2023, but he also got his magic mushroom on in one of the most reviewed games of the year.
Phrasing.
Wonder is the first side-scrolling Mario game since 2012's Super Mario Bros. U. Inviting plenty of nostalgia. For older gamers, it still feels like classic Mario, but one new feature that mixes things up is the Wonder Flowers, which have reality-altering effect on the map when collected. The result is enough to make gamers of any age proclaim, "Wahoo!"
Perfect. Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Number 6, Dead Space Remake. Whether or not anyone can hear you, there will be plenty of screaming in Dead Space. The remake of the iconic survival horror game from Motive Studio and EA may retell a familiar story, but don't let that fool you into thinking you know what's around every corner. It's an incredibly designed game with lighting and sound design that not only takes full advantage of the current gen systems, but creates an end result so terrifying that it forces the player to take a deep breath and check their supplies before venturing forward at every point.
Number 5, Resident Evil 4 Remake. The best entry of the Resident Evil series gets an upgrade that is more than worthy of the original's reputation. The story of the original game is retained, but one of the biggest improvements to the game is that Ashley has a lot more agency and feels more like a partner to Leon, rather than being a constant chore for him to keep track of. All of these improvements and additions make RE4 a more enthralling adventure and a high point for the contemporary survival horror.
Leon!
Yeah. I have to admit, I was the first time she got carried away in the game, I was like, is she going to do it? Is she going to do it?
And you get to shoot the water 5 times, right?
No.
Number 4, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. The sequel to the 2017 Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom is the result of planned DLC content for Breath of the Wild growing too ambitious. Nintendo's Tears of the Kingdom permits the time and space for all of the ambition to get the spotlight if rightly deserved. It's easy to get lost in the beauty of the game and just explore, but the compelling story linked to the ancient history of Hyrule always brings the player back to the central quest and solving mysteries that await there.
Number 3, Spider-Man 2. One of the most anticipated games of the year, the follow-up to Insomniac's Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales, is an epic and emotional journey that furthers the themes of the previous 2 games and allows the characters and the city they inhabit to evolve. While the game may be a little shorter than Spider-Man, the side quests are more meaningful and work better within the context of the game's themes on the finite nature of time. Ironically, Spider-Man 2 is a game you just won't want to end. When it does, we're left with the greatest superhero game ever made.
Number 2, Baldur's Gate 3. Larian Studios' third entry in the Baldur's Gate franchise takes the RPG to new heights. Based on Dungeons & Dragons, Baldur's Gate 3 is set in the open world of the Forgotten Realms. Players design a character, choosing from 12 classes, and join a party of pre-generated characters for an adventure that can be played solo or multiplayer, allowing the player to toggle between the two. Given the length of the game, which is well over 100 hours, there's plenty to explore, both on your own or with friends, making Baldur's Gate 3 the gamer gift that keeps on giving.
And number 1, Alan Wake 2.
Ah, come on.
Alan Quake 2.
Thank you.
Some believed it would have never happened, but after 13 years, the cult game Alan Wake finally has a proper follow-up, and it's a doozy. More than just another video game, Alan Wake 2 is a celebration of art infused with meta-narratives, musical numbers, connections to Remedy games, Control, and Quantum Break, and a frightening and elegant examination of writing and what it means to put your words out in the world. And if all that wasn't enough, it's one of the most terrifying survival horror games of the last decade. It's a game worth revisiting to discover additional clues and connections. Just remember, stay in the light.
So, immediate thoughts on the list? I have to admit, when I saw Tears of the Kingdom at 4 and Spider-Man 2 at 3, I made a squinty face. I was like, what is this?
Yes.
What is this nonsense?
It's the greatest superhero game ever made.
Right? Well, when you think about it, Tears of the Kingdom was just a rehash of Breath of the Wild.
And Spider-Man 2 was not just a rehash of the 2 previous Spider-Man games that came before it.
Man, she's ready to fight on that one.
Hey, put up your dukes. I ain't got no dukes.
I got no dukes. The one that surprised me here, and I think we all 3 of us kind of did the squinty eyes at the game whenever we first reviewed it or announced it, was Dredge. Yeah. We're like, it's a fishing game. It's a It's a horror fit. Like, what is this, Jaws? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Come on. And now here it is one of the top 10 games of 2023. That's to me surprising.
Yeah, that's the main shocker on the list, I think. But games like Diablo 4, Donnie, I know you played it a little bit, but it seems like you fell off of it pretty quick.
I did, because you know what? It's the same old thing. There's really no, just like whenever Diablo 4 came out, I'm like, oh, I was still grinding dungeons on Diablo 3. So, all right, let me jump over to Diablo 4. Oh, look, it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. It's just a different storyline. You finish the storyline, you're like, what's the difference between this and Diablo 3? Just, newer gear? Who cares?
It's the NES Mega Man problem.
Yeah, no kidding. So once I finished the storyline for Diablo 4, I was done. I don't want to sit there and grind play a game like that, just mindlessly, okay, cast a spell, okay, get rid of these characters, okay, go to town, let me do that. No, it's just, no, I'm done. No thanks.
I think seeing 7 as being Super Mario Brothers Wonder, I would expected that to be much higher on the list. Maybe even like above a few remakes like Dead Space and Resident Evil 4.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it is like a kind of a, if you think about it, kind of like a remake of classic Mario games, it's added a completely new element to it that just made the whole genre of 2D Mario feel brand new.
Yeah. And I will say, I think that, this list comes from Time Magazine, so it's going to be a little bit more like artsy with its choices.
Oh, this isn't the New Yorker.
So they put Super Mario Brothers Wonder on there because it's an amazing game. But were they ever really going to take it as seriously as something like Alan Wake 2 with its meta narratives and rock operas?
Rock opera.
Good thing nobody reads your little Time magazine.
But the shocker game of the year for me was Resident Evil 4 Remake, because I was so prepared to hate it. I thought they were going to ruin it, and they didn't. And I had to eat every word I ever said because it was so good and I loved it. And they even made Ashley like 80% less annoying.
Bearable now.
I'm not actively shooting her anymore.
I will say Baldur's Gate 3 basically coming out of nowhere and being considered to be one of the best games of the year also kind of warms my heart a little bit, because there's so many games out there that have just been on the hype train for years and everybody's expecting these huge productions of games. Mm-hmm. And Baldur's Gate 3 just came out of left field. And yeah, sure, there were people who were doing the beta and stuff, but when that finally hit, it just became a smash hit overnight. Whether that has to do with sex with a bear, I don't know, but
I'm sure it did. Super Troopers did it first.
Bear fucker, do you need assistance? So that is awesome. I will say Alan Wake, though, I hear a lot of mixed reviews on that one. So being at number 1 is a little surprising to me. It doesn't seem to be a unanimous choice. However, Game Awards certainly gave them a lot of credit. So
yeah, and one thing we didn't discuss in the post Game Awards episode was the fact that Alan Wake 2 was the digital only game. And because the game did so well and got so much acclaim, they're probably going to think that was an amazing strategy and there's no reason to ever change it. And probably other developers as well are going, oh, hey, well, if they can do that well with a digital only game, what are we bothering with physical discs for?
So all the reviews were fake, and it was put together by a company that is strongly invested in digital-only games.
Could be. Or it could be a next major step in the future that we all know is coming anyway, the digital-only future.
Don't say that.
I'm sorry that you don't like the truth.
We are basically all Thelma and Louise sitting in that car. About to go
Let's just keep going.
Now I'm depressed. Thanks, Blue.
You're welcome.
If you're feeling depressed, just pop in Super Mario Brothers Odyssey.
Ah, there you go.
All better. A physical disc of it.
Thank you for making that delineation.
Keep it physical.
Yeah, I have it on a real cartridge. I don't know about you guys.
So do I.
So do I.
So what was your guys' game of the year?
For me, I have not played any of these games. I'll be perfectly honest with you because
I'm
of
shocked
what you
to hear
pointed out earlier that I don't play newer games past 1999. But I want to play Baldur's Gate 3, so that will be on my list of games to play, and I am waiting to love it because I've heard so many good things about it.
And it's so stats based, and you're such a numbers nerd. I really think you'll love it.
Me and my nerds will return to the nerdery with our calculators.
Prepare to calculate.
But what was your game of the year that you played? Suika game?
Probably, yeah.
No, come on. It's Splatoon 3, isn't it? That came out this year.
No, I thought that came out last year.
Oh, okay. I was trying to help you out, but...
I appreciate the help, but yeah.
Okay. Donnie, what was your game of the year?
Super Mario Brothers Wonder, I fell in love with. I was trying to take it slow initially. I would play like one level a day or one level, like maybe 2 levels a day. And I'm like, okay, this is exciting and see what I could do with it. See if I could just get the 100% on each level. And I did. And it wasn't terribly difficult, but it got its hooks in me. After like the first 2 days, I'm like, okay, now I'm focused. Now I'm purely focused on Super Mario Brothers Wonder. I don't want to play anything else. I want to try and get through the game quickly so I can go back and do all of the stuff, get all of the stars and the levels, get all of the flags that I need to, get all of the secret worlds and stuff like that. And this was the first game in a long time that I wanted to 100% the game. And then I had a focus of 100%ing the game. No other game around has really made me want to do that. So for me, it was Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
And this one looks like it's fairly doable to 100% it, as opposed to like Super Mario 3D World, where the requirements were just like, I thought I was getting really close after I played through and 100%ed every level up until the end game with Mario. And then I was like, I don't feel like I'm getting any closer. Look at the requirements for 100%ing the game. And you had to do it all over again with each of the other 4 characters.
What?
And I was like, fuck that. I'm not, and nobody got time for that. I am not doing all of this over again. So it kind of killed my enthusiasm for the game. But
so it wanted you to beat it 5 times?
It's 100% it 5 times.
Oh, good Lord. No, thanks.
Yeah, no thanks. And I think what it meant was for you to do it all at once with like a group. But yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, there they go. Forcing you into couch co-op again or multiplayer.
Yeah, no thanks.
With Super Mario Brothers Wonder, however, it's like you said, this was a game that it's actually doable to 100% it. Now, is it tough? Absolutely. The final part with the secret world and stuff like that, those challenges are straight out of Super Mario Maker. And one of the final challenges is like an endurance trial. So all these different badges that you get throughout the game, it's like, hey, now you have to do all this all over again in consecutive order. And you're like, oh my God, I don't think I can do this.
But you did it.
I did it. It took me a while, and I did it. Should I not have spoiled that?
I mean, I don't care. If I were you, I'd have gone online and bragged about it.
Well, I mean, I did make a post about it, but I didn't brag, you know.
What's Twitter for if not bragging?
You got a point.
Now.
Look at me. I'm Donnie G. What about you, Blue? What was your number 1 game of the year?
Well, I played a lot of really amazing games. Loved Super Mario Brothers Wonder. Loved Resident Evil 4. Loved Baldur's Gate. I need to go back to Dead Space Remake because played it like the first weekend it was out and it was super buggy. And I just lost patience for it. So I'm sure it's patched up now and getting a lot of acclaim ever since. So I really do need to go back to that. But I think my game of the year, it always was Tears of the Kingdom, because I love Breath of the Wild so much. And Tears of the Kingdom in many ways was just more Breath of the Wild, which is kind of exactly what I wanted anyway. And I really love that it was close enough to the Hyrule that I knew from before, from Breath of the Wild, with just enough changes to make it interesting and make it worthwhile to go around and keep exploring and see what had changed. And it was that attention to detail that was there specifically for the people who knew the first game really well and would notice that this rock wasn't here before, or, this building used to be this way, that kind of stuff. So I put about 150 hours into Tears of the Kingdom.
Nice.
Jesus.
Hands down, my game of the year.
Wait a second. This rock was over here the last time. I don't know what's going on here. Maybe I should investigate. That level?
More or less. You guys would just have to come over and narrate while I'm playing.
No, I'm okay with us like hopping on Discord one night and doing that. That would be super fun.
Like a Mystery Science Theater
Yes.
3000.
Yes.
One of us plays and the others of us narrate.
Oh, please, let's start doing that. That's something that we should do. We should all take, yes, come on now.
What I was going to say is next episode after this is actually our 2-year anniversary, and we still don't know what we're going to do.
Ooh.
We got to do a live thing, shouldn't we?
Well, we can do a live stream of maybe what we just suggested, or...
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
Shoot the water 5 times, Donnie.
1, 2.
All right, before we move on, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor. This segment is proudly sponsored by A Gamer Looks at 40 podcast. The show explores the history of video games through the stories and experiences of the everyday people who lived it. The podcast is currently on hiatus, but there are over 90 episodes in the backlog ready to be explored. This week, Bill recommends episode 64, The Lone Redeemer of the Zelda CDI games. In this episode, Bill talks with Dopley, an amateur developer who remade Zelda ZDI games on a dare and turned them into playable titles. This week's question is, what awful game deserves to be remade into something decent? Let Bill know your answer by sending him a tweet at which is definitely not AT-AT.
Weird.
Oh, Jesus.
At A Gamer Looks at 40 on Twitter.
How about you remake Lord of the Rings Golem into something else?
But see, it had to be a good idea to begin with.
I say remake E.T. into like an open world game, right? And the only way I'm going to be super satisfied with it is if that there's a Easter egg in which you can find Howard Scott Warshaw. You open a door and he just goes, "Oh no, not again."
I'm sure he would be down for voicing that cameo as
sure.
well.
Absolutely.
There's a 2005 game on the PS2 called Trapped, and it's basically if Home Alone was set in a gothic castle,
Go on.
and if instead of Macaulay Culkin, it was an anime princess.
Okay.
And basically, there's intruders trying to kill her because she's been accused of killing the king, and so she has to stay alive. And then there's like evil forces involved as well. But basically, she runs around the castle setting traps and then luring the bad guys into it. And for the time, it was pretty brutal. But it was also super clunky, and it was a bad translation from the Japanese dialogue. And so I think it deserves a remake where it actually works, for one, and then it's not so repetitive because there were really limited animations for each trap. And so after a couple, levels or chapters, I guess, it got super, super, super repetitive visually. So I think that if it was redone to where it actually worked, where it had a lot of variety, and let's amp up the gore, and that would be killer.
It's funny because me and Donnie had joke answers and you actually had a legit one.
I want to make sure Bill's getting his money worth.
There you go. All right, thank you for coming, students. Please take your seat. Welcome back to Professor Ryebread's Gaming History 101. And in today's lesson, we will discuss a truly controversial figure in the world of gaming whose exploits include some of the most iconic games and genres, as well as potentially shady business dealings with fans and the press. Today, we're going to be talking about Peter Molyneux, or Molyneux, depending on who you ask. So if you're familiar with Peter, it's likely for one of two reasons. Either you love Godsend games, or you've become familiar with his wild claims about his games in development that never came to fruition. If you're not familiar, well, strap in. This is going to be a wild ride. So Peter started off his career studying development at university in the UK, and once graduating, he began selling ported games from the Atari to floppy disks to be played on PC. Now, getting the idea that he should make his own game, he created a text-based business simulator known as the Entrepreneur. Peter took out ads in a few gaming magazines and was so convinced his game would do well, he even altered his mailbox to fit more mail. However, only 2 orders came through, which Peter has suggested he thinks were both from his mom.
Oh, you got to give him props for admitting it.
Now, realizing the games industry wasn't his thing, him and his friend decided to instead make a business exporting baked beans to the Middle East, of which, right, I'm not even making this up. This sounds like, like something you would put into Chat GPT, right?
It's a Mad Lib.
Right, exactly. So the funny part, though, is Peter is quoted as saying he ate more beans than he sold and to this day refuses to eat beans. Now, here comes the first amongst many examples where Peter has shown signs that he hasn't had the highest level of integrity. Now, his baked beans company was called Taurus, like the bull, but there was a game development company named Taurus, spelled Torus, out there as well. One day, Peter got a call to come down to Amiga to speak with them. Part of the way through the meeting, Peter realized that Amiga had made a mistake and was thinking about telling them until they offered him 10 free PCs to start developing for them. In a very George Costanza move, Peter accepted the offer, completely aware he had no idea how to complete what Amiga was asking for, decided to fake it until he made it, which he did, which was he was able to hire legit programmers. Now, this eventually led Peter to creating a new development company in the late 80s that I have a lot of affinity for, and that's known as Bullfrog. Now, at Bullfrog, Peter developed one of the first examples of a God Sim game with the development of Populous. Paraphrasing Peter, he explained that he had no intention to develop a new genre of game, but rather wasn't very good at coding, so he left all of the tough decisions up to the player, and thus Populous was born. Now, Bullfrog would, of course, go on to develop other games in the sim genre, which included the Theme series, aka Theme Park and Theme Hospital, which were major successes for the company and would go on to allow Bullfrog to be bought out by Electronic Arts. Now, Molyneux was brought over to EA as a vice president and was involved in several key projects, but overall, he really didn't like working there. In fact, during a night of heavy drinking with a friend, Peter typed up a resignation letter to his boss at EA, and the next morning found out that his friend had actually hit send.
Oh.
Peter had to apologize and explain the situation, but EA wasn't convinced. In fact, they told him that he could stay employed, but wasn't allowed to come in the office and had to finish the projects from home.
Okay.
Yep. Win-win, right? He got Now, this led to Peter to officially resign and start Lionhead Studios. Now, you may know Lionhead Studios from popular games such as Fable and the Black and White series. And this is where Peter, as a shady character, began to populate in the minds of gamers and the press. For example, during the development of Fable, Peter told the press that gamers would plant acorns in the ground and that over time they would grow into oak trees that the progeny of your character could interact with. However, after the release of the game, there were no such acorns, and the main characters couldn't even have children. Whoops. So some other examples of overpromising and under-delivering include Project Milo, where he saw an opportunity while partnering with Microsoft to help show the capabilities of the new Kinect by creating a fake video of a woman interacting with a seemingly AI child named Milo, in which the child would react to the player's emotions and act human. It was later discovered that despite the claims in the video to the contrary, the interaction was staged. This helped Peter and land an executive job in Microsoft, which he held until 2014, where he started another studio called 22 Can. Joke being that that's funny because in 2022, that's exactly how much it was worth.
I thought it was going to be a callback to that's how many cans of baked beans he sold.
There you go. Probably is. At 22 Cans, Molyneux released a game similar to the plot of Ready Player One, which was a contest that promised a life-changing prize called Curiosity What's in the Cube, where players were tasked with removing cubes until they got to the final cube at the center. The winner of it received a video of Peter telling him that they'd receive God of God status in the new Goddess game, as well as profit sharing from the game. However, this never came to fruition for the winner, and Goddess never moved past the early access part of the Steam library and is not available for purchase.
Oh, how pissed would you be?
Right, and apparently the guy spent hours and hours and actually bought because there was in-game purchases that you could buy to like increase your tools in order to break down these blocks. Yeah. Now there are a myriad of other examples of promises made by Peter that never came true, but I don't have 3 hours or more to go through it. So I'll encourage you to check them out, including a 2014 interview done by Rock Paper Shotgun, in which he had an emotional meltdown and claimed he would never talk to the press again. Which, if you guessed it, he has. Now, to wrap things up, do I believe that Peter is a nefarious character looking to grift gamers? I do not. I think he's the kind of person that gets too excited about ideas before thinking them through and happens to speak about them to the media before they're ready. That being said, I would be personally wary about backing any future games Peter is involved with if your only source for game mechanics is Peter himself. At the end of the day, though, it can't be argued, despite the many flaws, he has been involved in some of the best games to come out over the last 30 years. So thank you for attending today's Gaming History 101. And just a reminder, if you have any ideas for a story or a topic you'd like to hear, send us an email at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com, and we might feature your suggestion.
Yeah, the first time I became aware of Peter was around the Fable era. Mm-hmm. And since then, just kind of watching him in the news media, in the games media, and going, why do people still listen to him?
And the thing is, too, if you got caught once, just shut up. Don't learn your lesson and shut up. But no, he's the hype train, man. Which is funny because we're talking about all of these terrible games that came out this year, and a lot of it had to do with hype. It's like, were these made by Peter?
Well, and I think that's part of it is because he was successful doing that enough times that the rest of the game industry has kind of adopted it as like, this is a good way to do business.
Right. And so that, I mean, is he nefarious for doing that? No, but you're right. I think maybe his influence has had a negative impact on
I think his influence extends beyond the actual games themselves.
Right. Oh, Peter. Well, that'll about do it for us. Thank you for listening to episode 103 of Gamers Week Podcast. And a big thank you to Retro Game Club Podcast, Love Retro BTW, and A Gamer Looks at 40 Podcasts for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to check out their links in the show notes. If you want to connect with Gamers Week, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. Email us at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com. Visit our merch store at gamers-week-podcast.creator-spring.com. Or if you want to do it the easy way, follow the link in the show notes. And join us on Patreon at patreon.com/gamersweek. And finally, since you made it all the way to the end of the episode, please leave us a rating and review to let us know how we did. We really value your feedback. And while you're there, consider subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Merry New Year. Beef jerky time.
It's happy. We say Happy New Year.
Do you guys have any plans for New Year's?
Oh, God, no, I'm old.
And I'm antisocial, so.
All right.
I'm excited because New Year's Day, there's a Wrexham game as well as football, not high school, college football games going on. So I'm excited for New Year's Day more than I am for New Year's Eve.
The New Year's Eve, New Year's Day bowl games are always a fun time.
And the Winter Classic.
That's right. The Winter Classic as well.
Yep.
It's going to be a week of sports.
And everybody who listened to this video game podcast suddenly to be betrayed at the end and find out it was just all along.
Gotcha, man.
We didn't describe what kind of games.
Sports games podcast. Sponsored by EA.
Oh, even worse. It's in the lane.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Does the name Deep Throat mean anything to you?
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut, patrons with benefits. This is the unscripted, patron-only bonus cast with less editing and more dirty jokes. We don't know where the conversation will go, but we're sure it will be weird.
This fish just went right on my nipple, and I'm just like,
I Google Street Fighter 6. The first search result that comes up is people think they can see Ryu's in the Street Fighter 6 reveal.
Listen up here, kids. You're not going to want to get one of those VD-STDs things, right? Make you fall off. When you go, grab a pro. You'll be doing it for America.
That was perfect.
If you want to hear weekly episodes of our patron-only bonus cast, join us at patreon.com/gamersweek.